Hello, my beautiful bookish people. My name is Victoria. I am your bookish sock queen. Sock meaning I like wearing nice fuzzy things and just being comfortable. So that's how we roll here. And today I am coming to you with my August reading wrap-up, which I am basically a month late in filming. So, here we go. This is gonna be a ride. I'm not very good at reading wrap-ups, so let's see how this goes. First of all, books I will not be covering, since I already talked about them in my Newt's reading wrap-up video, are You Do You, Proud to be Fabulous by Tan France and Nikki Levy, Dollar's Book of Greek Myths by Ingrid Dallaire, The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, Wilder Girls by Rory Power, which there should actually be a separate video up for now by the time you see this video, The Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan, Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan, The Tales of Beetle the Bard by J.K. Rowling, and The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So if you want to know my thoughts on any of those books, I will leave links for that down in the description box below. So, all of the 11 other books that weren't already covered as part of my readathon are, number 1, It's Not What It Looks Like by Molly Burke. This is an Audible-only exclusive, and it covers, if you don't know who Molly Burke is, she's a blind YouTuber that does, like inspirational speaking and stuff like that, and just kind of explains what it's like to be blind, and if you want to, what not to ask a blind person, or, how to help a blind person if you'd like to help them, that sort of stuff. Just overall, how she gets about through her life while being a blind lady. And actually, I've watched so much of her content by now since reading this book, I'm not super sure if I can distinguish the difference between what I read and what I've watched, because I find all of her content really neat. But she does cover a lot of stories that she doesn't cover in her videos in the book, and it's just really neat to hear more of those stories. I gave this book 4 stars, just because I don't plan to constantly reread it, but it was a very good book. Next we have King of Thorns by Mark Lawrence, which is the second book in the Broken Empire trilogy, and I can't really get into a whole lot of what happens in this because it is a sequel, but I liked the first 15% of this book and the last 20% of this book. And the middle kind of was a bit of a bore to me. I did appreciate that this book had a lot more world building in it than the first one did. So that was something I really missed if you watched my review of the first book in this series. I wanted to know more about why things were the way they were, and we definitely get that in the second book. This book, again, is kind of like, if you like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, then you'll probably like this book. But I'm one of the few people who didn't love Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. They were kind of the shows that I loved to hate because I didn't enjoy them, but also I couldn't look away. But also I wasn't sad if I missed an episode and came back to it a couple years later, and that's kind of how I feel about this trilogy. I can take it or leave it. Right now I'm leaving it. I may come back for the third book eventually, but it's just not for me. I think I gave it 4 stars just because it is a really well-written story and everything, but for my personal rating, I may bump it down to 3 just because it's not my jam. And that's okay. It's still a really good book. It's well-written. It's just not my jam. Next, I read The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. And this was a nostalgic reread for me. I just needed something lighthearted after reading some Mark Lawrence, and this fit the bill for me. I'll read you the book description for this one. Hailed as a classic humorous, full of warmth and real invention by The New Yorker, this beloved story, first published more than 50 years ago, introduces readers to Milo and his adventures in the lands beyond. For Milo, everything's a bore. When a toll booth mysteriously appears in his room, he drives through only because he's got nothing better to do. But on the other side, things seem different. Milo visits the land of conclusions. You get there by jumping. Learns about time from a ticking watchdog named Talk, and embarks on a quest to rescue Rhyme and Reason. Somewhere along the way, Milo realizes something astonishing. Life is far from dull. In fact, it's exciting beyond his wildest dreams. This book is absolutely silly and full of puns, if you couldn't garner that from the book description. I thrive on puns and silliness. This book is one of my all-time favorites and remains one of my all-time favorites. I love it. 5 stars all the way. Will reread once a year, usually. Next up, I have The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. It's the Percy Jackson number 3 book, and I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed the Percy Jackson series. Next, I read The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. Percy Jackson number 4. Again, great series. Really enjoying it. I gave this one 4 stars though, because I was starting to be able to predict what was happening because I got used to the style in which those books are written. It's still really good. It just starts to get somewhat predictable. And same thing for The Last Olympian, which is Percy Jackson number 5 by Rick Riordan. 4 stars. Predictable, but very good. Next, I read A Grown-Up Guide to Dinosaurs by Ben Garrett, which is another Audible exclusive. And if you liked learning about dinos as a kid and didn't grow up to become a paleontologist, then this is a good book for you. It's got some basic explanations, some cool comparisons. It's dinosaurs. What's not to love? I gave it 4 stars just because I don't plan to constantly reread it, but it's still a very cute little book. Next, we have Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson. This is another reread for me.
Hi.
Hello, interrupter. Where was I? The next book I read is Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson. If you don't know who Sarah Anderson is, she is a little comic artist. Publishes her stuff mostly online. You can find her just about anywhere. She has a website. She eventually collated some of her work into books. I'm not sure if the books contain exclusive comics that weren't online or not, especially since this was her first, physical published book. But I love her stuff. It's super relatable. It gives me a good giggle, and it lets me know that I'm not the only one having the same problems. It's great. Check it out. 5 stars. Will reread whenever sad. Next book I read was Legion by Brandon Sanderson. In this, we follow Stephen Leeds, aka Legion, a man whose unique mental condition allows him to create many people who are also hallucinations, some of which also have their own mental health conditions, which he then uses them to, fight crime on high-profile cases. I believe this is called a novella series. It's part mystery solving mixed with mental conditions / mental health awareness, and I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this. But it kind of reminds me a tiny bit of the show Monk that USAA had for a long time, forever ago. It's not really like Monk, it's just the closest thing that I can think of to equate it, because it's solving stuff while dealing with mental condition. That's really the only thing it has in common, because it's not the same at all. I don't know why I'm using that as a reference, but if you liked Monk, you'll definitely like Legion, I guess. Yeah. Anyways, it was really cool to see this. I am looking forward to more of this series. It's really neat. Check it out if you like mystery stuffs and seeing how a genius with mental illnesses handles mystery solving. It's really neat. The next book I read was A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, which is book number 1 of the All Souls trilogy. The book description for this reads, "Deep in the stack of Oxford's Bodleian Library, young scholar Diana Bishop unwittingly calls a bewitched alchemical manuscript in the course of her research. Descended from an old and distinguished line of witches, Diana wants nothing to do with sorcery, so after a furtive glance and a few notes, she banishes the book to the stacks. But her discovery sets a fantastical underworld stirring, and a horde of demons, witches, and vampires soon descend upon the library. Diana has stumbled upon a coveted treasure lost for centuries, and she is the only creature who can break its spell. Is this description accurate for the book? Yes, that covers the first few chapters, but also what it doesn't hit at whatsoever is that there is a heavy romance theme through this book as well. So if you're looking for another good vampire romance, this is right up your alley. I do want to continue this series, but I'm not dying to get my hands on the next book. It's good. I'm not currently in the mood for romance, but when I am, I'm sure it'll be great. By the end of the book, I really liked their romance. I just didn't expect it based on the cover description. Overall, I gave it 4 stars, and I'll get to the next book when I get there. Next, I read These Broken Stars by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. This is book number 1 in the Starbound trilogy. It is a true sci-fi meets romance novel, and I picked this one up because A, I like sci-fi, and B, I've just read some J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman stuff written together, and I was wondering if, hey, have I found another author whose entire library I am ready to devour? And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think I like Kristoff and Kaufman together, but I'm not sure how well I like Kaufman and Spooner together. Because, again, I wasn't currently in the mood for romance. That's my bad, but I'm not sure that I ever plan to reread it either. There are some romance books that even when I'm not in the mood for that, I'm like, heck yes, I will reread this. But this one, I'm not so sure. I'll continue with the series. In fact, I'm on book 3 of the series right now as I'm speaking. But, it's good. I gave it 3 stars. It's fine. It's just not my cup of tea. And that's okay. I think the reason I don't mind the romance aspects in Aurora Rising is because it's coated in heavy amounts of sarcasm and dry humor, which I thrive on. So I think I'm definitely more of a Kristoff fan. But if you are looking for a good sci-fi romance, I will read the book description for you and tell you if it's accurate or not. It's a night like any other on board the Icarus. Then catastrophe strikes. The massive luxury space liner is yanked out of hyperspace and plummets into the nearest planet. Lilac LaRue and Tarver Merendison survive, and they seem to be alone. Lilac is the daughter of the richest man in the universe. Tarver comes from nothing, a young war hero who learned long ago that girls like Lilac are more trouble than they're worth. But with only each other to rely on, Lilac and Tarver must work together, making a torturous journey across the eerie, deserted terrain to seek help. Then, against all odds, Lilac and Tarver find a strange blessing in the tragedy that has thrown them into each other's arms. Without the hope of a future together in their own world, they begin to wonder, would they be better off staying here forever? Everything changes when they uncover the truth behind the chilling whispers that haunt their every step. Lilac and Tarver may find a way off this planet, but they won't be the same people who landed on it. The Starbound trilogy. 3 worlds, 3 love stories, 1 enemy. And yes, that book description is quite accurate. So if that sounds like something that's good for you, then you're probably gonna love it. Next, we have The House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig, which is quite popular on BookTube right now. From what I've heard, it's a retelling of The 12 Dancing Princesses, but I have no idea about the original because I've never read The 12 Dancing Princesses, so I can't offer whether it's a good retelling or not. I liked the book overall, though. The book description is: in a manor by the sea, 12 sisters are cursed. Annalie lives in a sheltered life at Highmoor, a manor by the sea, with her sisters, their father, and stepmother. Once they were 12, But loneliness fills the grand halls now that 4 of the girls' lives have been cut short. Each death was more tragic than the last. The plague, a plummeting fall, a drowning, a slippery plunge. And there are whispers throughout the surrounding villages that the family is cursed by the gods. Disturbed by a series of ghostly visions, Annalie becomes increasingly suspicious that the deaths were no accidents. Her sisters have been sneaking out every night to attend glittering balls, dancing until dawn in silk gowns and shimmering slippers, and Annalie isn't sure whether to try to stop them or to join their forbidden trysts. Because who, or what, are they really dancing with? When Annalie's involvement with a mysterious stranger who has secrets of his own intensifies, it's a race to unravel the darkness that has fallen over her family before it claims her next. And I would say that that description is extremely accurate. I wasn't super engrossed in the first 2/3-ish of the way through the book. Like, it was really good. I was happy to continue reading it, but I didn't have any problems putting it down. But by the last third of the book, you couldn't tear me away from it. Overall, I gave this book 4 stars, just because I think it's on the younger end of YA, and I'm not sure how many rereads I would give it currently, because I'm in my mid-20s now, and I'm looking for slightly more complexity in my books that I plan to reread over and over and over again. But it was very, very good. Next we have The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and this is a fantasy book that is very well grounded in the real world. The book description says, "There are only 2 reasons a non-seer would see a spirit on St. Mark's Eve," Neve said. "Either you're his true love, or you killed him. It is freezing in the churchyard even before the dead arrive. Every year, Blue Sargent stands next to her clairvoyant mother as the soon-to-be dead walk past. Blue herself never sees them, not until this year, when a boy emerges from the dark and speaks directly to her. His name is Gansey, and Blue soon discovers that he is a rich student at Aglenby, the local private school. Blue has a policy of staying away from Aglenby boys. Known as Raven Boys, they can only mean trouble. But Blue is drawn to Gansey in a way she can't entirely explain. He has it all: family money, good looks, devoted friends. But he's looking for much more than that. He is on a quest that has encompassed 3 other Raven Boys: Adam, the scholarship student who resents all the privileged around him; Ronan, the fierce soul who ranges from anger to despair; and Noah, the taciturn watcher of the 4, who notices many things but says very little. For as long as she can remember, Blue has been warned that she will cause her true love to die. She never thought this would be a problem, but now, as her life becomes caught up in the strange and sinister world of the Raven Boys, she's not so sure anymore." From Maggie Stiefvater, the best-selling and acclaimed author of the Shiver trilogy and the Scorpio races, comes a spellbinding new series where the inevitability of death and the nature of love lead us to places we've never been before. And yes, that is a very accurate book description. Overall, I gave this book 4 stars. Although, as I go through the series, I might overall raise the series to 5 stars, depending on how much I like it as it goes on. It's intriguing, but again, sometimes I could take it or leave it. I wasn't super engrossed the entire time. There you go. And that wraps up the rest of the books that I read in August. I'm trying to get better at doing my reading wrap-ups and explaining books a little bit better. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!